Hi, welcome back to my channel. And today I am here with my bestie, Grace Adeneye.
Hi,
Hey,
everyone.
Grace. Right. And so today we're going to be talking about handling feedback as a creative. So if you do not know, Grace and I have in common a lot of things beyond the obvious. People always ask us if we're sisters, but nope, we're not blood related siblings, but she's like a sister. But outside of that, we share a love for music and for writing and for academia and many other things, and of course, a love for the Lord. So we're really close. And Grace is an author, and she's published, so she's a rock star, and she has a brother that's on a record label. So she does understand the music industry as well as having sung on choirs and with choirs in the past and did a lot of that growing up. So she's knowledgeable. But as creatives, we share a lot of similarities. And today we're going to be talking about one of those areas that we all face as creatives, which is learning to deal with feedback and criticism and how you can use that to your favor. So, Grace, do you want to talk a little bit and share an experience you've had around feedback and what you did with it?
Yeah, so in my field, I do not sing. So my experience
Professionally, that is what you
professionally,
think.
yes,
Yes.
I have what is called a choir voice. So yeah, best in an ensemble. But as Claire said, I am a writer and I do work extensively one-on-one with editors. So when I'm trying to sell a manuscript, sell a book, sell a story, one of the things that's done even after the story is purchased, even after it's done, is I get feedback on it, and based on that feedback I have to revise it and make it ready for publication and ready to go out, into a market. And it usually comes in the form of an editorial letter that can be anywhere from one to, man, I don't want to even think about how many pages long it is. And if you remember in school when your professors marked up your papers with all the red ink, they do that too. Now it's done in Google Docs, but all the comments are there. Some editors are nicer than others, but the feedback's intended to help you make a stronger draft, to make a better draft. So I was telling Claire a couple of days ago, when I get one of those editorial letters, I read it fast, like with super speed. I take a deep breath, I close it, I close the email, and I put it away for a week. And I just let myself calm down and process everything I just read. Because that first knee-jerk reaction, I'm not a particularly defensive person, but these projects are something that I've worked on with, as they say, blood, sweat, and tears, your heart, soul, and mind. You've really poured yourself into it. And as a creative, your work is so precious to you. It's your baby. It's something that you've produced out of yourself. Sometimes it comes from a place of pain. Sometimes it comes from a place where you're telling a story about something that's really important to you. Sometimes you've sacrificed so much just to get that thing out. And Claire and I were also both similar in that we have families. We have families with young children. Mine are younger. And balancing family life and ministry life and other responsibilities with our creative work is just so incredibly taxing. Sometimes you're waking up at 5 a.m. Sometimes you're skipping meals. Sometimes there's moments you could be spending, with your kids or with your spouse or with your family, that they're also sacrificing that time with you so that you can produce.
Absolutely.
Money goes into it, training goes into it. So you
Absolutely.
work and sweat and just put your all into something. and then hand it to somebody as a product and
Mhm.
say, tell me what you think. No matter how positively they spin that feedback, when you get it back, your insides are just in knots, because
Absolutely.
you want them to love it. You want them to recognize the labor of love that you've poured into that. And I think that is sometimes where the disconnect happens, because the person giving the feedback, their only object is to make this thing that you've given them better, is to give their honest opinion. Some with more tact and more skill than others. And I always say, when I'm asking for feedback, I'm not asking the person to tell me I'm talented and I'm great, but part of me is kind of asking the person to tell me I'm talented and I'm great and I'm fabulous, even though I'm that and the other thing. So, your feelings are always a little bit hurt. So, so that's my
Absolutely.
experience, just putting it away, taking a breath, thinking about it objectively, and then coming back and reading it piece by piece, going through it sentence by sentence, and then assessing it to see how useful it is for that particular project.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so true. I remember um several seasons in my life I have received feedback, that has helped propel me. And like Grace, you were just saying, some of the best feedback I've received, haven't been the most palatable. It wasn't
Yes.
delivered with tact. It was totally tactless. And I'll give you a few that I've heard in the past. One of my senior managers said to me, he says, do your stuff or do your work tastefully. And I was like, what exactly was this person talking about? So the person, to put it in context, the person wasn't talking about the content of my work, but the person was talking about the presentation of it. And I was crossed for a bit because it's like, hey, you didn't even say anything about the content. All you said was tastefully. What does that mean? You know, um, and so I had to go away from that, right? And divorce myself from the emotion, of it. And like, I've worked hard, like you said, blood, sweat, and tears, I spent hours and days and taking the work home, done it and brought it back and said tastefully, really, what does that mean?
Yeah.
However, I took that feedback because I went back and I thought about it and like, okay, you want tasteful? I'll show you tasteful. And then the same person a few months later says, great minds think alike. And
Exactly.
I was like, okay, there's the transition, but at the point of receiving it, it wasn't like the best. I also know that when I was doing my PhD thesis, and Grace is such a part of that journey,
I
receiving
remember that.
feedback from my supervisor, and then I just look at all of the comments and shut it down and go off for a week. The week seems to be the magic number, right, Grace?
Yes,
And then you
I
come
think
back
so.
and then you start reading through slowly and like, okay. And the idea is to remove that emotional response. So, Grace, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, do you want to say something around that, how you process feedback and
Absolutely.
emotions, that emotional response, and how it can get in the way of doing something good with feedback?
Absolutely. I mean, for me personally, I think it's recognizing that, number one, good feedback doesn't always make you feel good. Um,
That is truth right
yeah,
there.
it doesn't. And picking the the good out of that whirlwind that you feel is just dropped on you, it takes time and reflection. And it also helps to sometimes, if you have someone that's close to you that you can share, who's familiar with your work, with your vision, with your project, share that feedback with them and ask them what they think. Give them your honest, first knee-jerk reaction to it and say, what do you think of this? And sometimes sharing it with a completely objective person, a person who doesn't have that emotional connection to your work, is a good reminder for yourself that feedback on your work is not personal to you. It's a tool to help you. So looking beyond the surface emotion and finding the value of the feedback, that's something that myself and Claire even and fellow authors that are in my network all do for each other. And it's a tremendous, tremendous help because, we're all going through that same experience. So someone on the outside can look at it and say, well, contextually, I think this person is trying to say this. It's not a personal attack. This is what they're trying to say. This is what they're trying to do. Perhaps this is where they're trying to direct you. And also, what you create is not for the person that is giving you feedback. You are the creator. You have the vision. Yeah. You ultimately know what you wanted to say and what you wanted to convey and what you wanted to do. That person giving the feedback, it's just one person's response. And something that is a real temptation when you get feedback, I think, is to make excuses or apologize for your work. Like I've had to take apologetic language out when I ask for feedback or when I'm communicating with someone who's giving me feedback, like, oh, I know this is really sloppy, or, I know this might be really hard to understand, or this is a real struggle to create, but I shouldn't be talking, I should be listening, and I should be evaluating. Why did the person who's giving me feedback respond the way they did, even if it seems to be over the top negative? Is there something that I can change to create a different response? Or is it because they didn't understand it? Is it because it's not for them? Is it because my clarity could have been better? Just looking for that thing of value within those words without removing power from yourself as the creator is hugely important.
Exactly. So what you're just saying is just reminding me of the book Rejection Proof, and it's by Jia Jiang. And I so recommend this book, guys, because he talked about a lot of his things about feedback, and the fact that, like Grace, you said, it is someone's opinion, and there's so many reasons why a person might not like your work, it may not resonate with them for several reasons, and that's okay. That is their personal taste. Yes. You cannot cater to the taste of all 7+ billion people on earth. Exactly. As a creative. It's not going to happen. And if that is your objective, that you're setting up yourself for disappointment, because even the best and greatest artists that we know of and creatives, you'll still meet people that don't like their work and like, I'm not crazy about J.K. Rowling's. I'm not crazy about it. You can fill in the blanks, the fact that they are famous doesn't mean that everybody accepts it. And even talking about J.K. Rowling's, that book was rejected severally, before. Look at today, and that's just one example of And I'm sure there's so many examples. In fact, I was just thinking about it today. Some of the best and greatest artists that you'll ever meet, either as as music artists or even songwriters, have all gone through intense rejection where people's like, I don't care for this, you know. Now, if they stopped at that point, where would they be today, you know? And so, Grace, where do you draw the line, you know, between, or rather, let me rephrase that. How do you determine if feedback, a particular negative feedback, is valuable, you know? And when do you decide that you need to pivot away from maybe what you're doing and do something different, you know, as a result of feedback, you know?
Oh, those are really good questions. I think to the first, I know feedback is valuable when the person that is offering the feedback knows what they're talking about and respects me, respects my craft. And I wouldn't say is tactful, but the person is giving feedback on the product itself and not on me, my level of talent, or my level of skill. Not in that good feedback can say you need to improve, you need to go back, you need to, you know, take writing classes, you need to be better at structure or grammar or whatever. That can be useful feedback. But you know, useful feedback is not saying something like, I don't know what you're doing in this industry. You're terrible. Just go away. No, that's not useful feedback. And someone who is speaking with the intent of giving you something to work on, even if that thing they're giving you to work on is misguided, even if you don't end up going in that direction, it gives you something to think about. You start thinking about new strategies, new paths, new solutions to whatever problem this person has identified. And I also think that recognizing good feedback happens when you notice patterns. It's important to get feedback not from one expert, but a whole team of experts.
So good.
I can tell you, in the publishing industry, before a book hits the shelf, it's read by no less than, I would say, like 4 editors.
Wow.
Because each editor, yes, they're an expert in publishing, they're an expert in the field, but they're going to read your book differently. They're going to see different strengths, they're going to see different things to work on. So if you're a songwriter, if you're a singer, you should be getting feedback from several different people. And if you see a pattern in that feedback, if every single person who you gave that thing to is saying you need to work on this, I didn't like this, I didn't like this, I didn't like this, I didn't like this. Okay, that to me might be indicative of something that I need to work on. And also, I would say, like, lastly, I think good feedback shines a light on something that I didn't see myself.
So good.
I think there's some things in your own work that you're blinded to because of your own biases, because of your own ignorance, because of your own perspectives, because of your own experiences. And good feedback will make you look at that piece of writing, at that song, at that piece of artwork and go, you know, you have a point. I didn't intend this when I made this, but I can see your perspective. I can see how it could be interpreted as this. I can see how going in this direction might make it stronger. If I'm looking at feedback and it's not fixing something, or at least trying to fix something that I might not have even recognized was a potential issue, then it might not be as useful as someone else's feedback might be.
That is so good. I think what you said about asking multiple experts is such a good um, approach to dealing with feedback, specifically in our world as creatives, because you pour your heart into that song,
Yeah.
right? And only for someone to say, gosh, this is rubbish.
Yeah.
What are you doing in this industry?
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, you should totally consider doing something else.
Yeah.
But that's one person's opinion.
Yes.
Now, if you talk to experts, several ones, in that industry and who know what they're talking about, and they all consistently say the same thing,
Mhm.
right? And hopefully they'll be much more gracious than that, you
Yes.
know, then you you can reevaluate, and good feedback is specific. you
Yes.
know it is not generalization, and it's not targeting the individual. Like, for example, the feedback I just gave you, which some people have received, thankfully I haven't gotten that kind of feedback, but just how devastating and damning that can be. um so if someone says, I wonder what you're doing writing.
Yeah.
You should not be writing at all. You're not good at this. That
And
is
for people
all
to
about
say
the
that,
person.
yeah.
Yeah, that is about you.
Mhm.
It's not about the work. The person hasn't said, I think you can put more depth to your writing. I think you can um help the story develop a little bit better, and
Yeah.
let's see some development around your character. That is helpful. I think you can add a little bit more energy to your songs. You can add more depth and perspective to your lyrics. You can have a greater focus on God than on yourself. That is something I can work with, and like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, I can take that and go work with it.
Absolutely.
Oh, I think um that part sounded a little off. You could go back and fix that. Those are specific
Mhm.
feedback that you can do something with. But when someone's like,
Yeah.
I don't think it comes up to scratch. Okay.
Yeah. Then it's like, so what?
Exactly.
Good feedback gives you a path forward. Whether
Exactly.
you want to tread that path or not is a different conversation. But good
Exactly.
feedback gives you a path, to go forward on. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing about good feedback. It's hope. It leaves you with hope.